I was actually sitting down this morning, deciding what's going to be my morning harmonic practice, and I'm going back to an older exercise I used to do all the time, and just to go through it, just because, you need to do harmonic upkeep. And this particular exercise forces you to use all the chords in a major key with all the inversions, which also means all the modes chords that you can form within the same tones of the major scale. And one thing I've noticed about teaching over the years is that one of the hardest things that holds people from creating chord progressions is actually knowledge, actually knowing these things by heart. You might sit there and struggle and guess until you finally come up with a chord sequence, and then just to realize later on, hey, this is something that's very normal. So this is what we're going to deal with. It sounds very impressive. Sounds like we're doing a lot of chords, just a whole ton of them. But there's only 7 chords in a diatonic, 7 triads diatonically in a major key. So all this is 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, arranged in a specific way that forces you to use every possible inversion. So every chord that you can run into triad in a key, it forces you to use every single inversion of those 3 notes. So inversions are important because you get a lot of mileage out of chords because of the inversions. It's only 3 chords. So this is something the classical masters gave us, is this ability to get an enormous amount of mileage out of just a couple of chords. It sounds like way more than it is, and it's just 3 chords, 1, 4, 5 in minor. And by knowing all these inversions of, like, I was using D mixolydian flat 6, you could create these kind of independent sounding parts with only 3 chords. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 7, 1. Now, this is not about mixolydian flat 6, so let's just go to this. I'm just pointing out how learning inversions could lead to all kinds of different situations. So let's just do one more, okay? I'm going to do the last half of what you see below, but in D. Let's just say you want to get into film composing. You're creating some big, majestic, sweeping, major melody for extreme happiness. You want a contrasting rise. Well, here's the sequence below. In inversions. Now no inversion, but I'll do it twice. See, I didn't have to take a lot of time to come up with a sequence either. In fact, I took no time at all. I just improvised on it. So all these tedious exercises that we're about to do lead to the ability to create very quickly. Now, here's what we don't want to do when we do this exercise. We don't want to do it super fast like that, okay? We're going to go ahead and start the boring part. We're going to do a 1 first inversion, 4 with the 5th in the bass, 7 with the 3rd in the bass. You want to take mental note of all these things. 3 root position, 6 with the 5th in the bass, 2 with the 3rd in the bass, 5 root position, 1. Now you repeat with this inversion. 1 with the 5th in the bass, 4 with the 3rd in the bass, 7 root position, 3 with the 5th in the bass, 6 with the 3rd in the bass, 2 root position, 5 with the 5th in the bass, 1 with the 3rd in the bass. Now you repeat one more time. 1 with the 3rd in the bass, 4 root position, 7 with the 5th in the bass, 3 with the 3rd in the bass, 6 with the root position, 2 with the 5th in the bass, 5 with the 3rd in the bass, and then you're back at the beginning. Just much higher. So you just really want to take this and you want to start moving it up to the next key you want to memorize it in and doing the same exact thing. Now, calling things out. I'm not going to call them out right now. I'm just doing the exercise for me personally. And you could probably stop it at this point. I showed you reasons why we're doing this. But I'm going to go ahead and go through all 12. And you want to do it super slow, like I said. And it doesn't matter if you mess up. The whole end goal is to be able to do this at least fluently enough to know what the next chord is. So we'd move this to D. Again, remember calling out the like the 4 with the 5th and the bass, the diminished chord with the 3rd, etc., etc. And that's why you should probably do it slower actually than what I'm doing it. However, for me, this is just personally harmonic upkeep, I call it. I want to make sure I can still do this. Once you have a certain pattern like this memorized, you may want to stop something. Like, here's a good idea. You may want to stop, okay? And then try to find your way back into the sequence. That's a good way to test. If something's too easy, test yourself by stopping for a little bit. And my screen looks like it froze. Okay, we're in E flat. I'm gonna go through it a little bit quicker now. But you can throw wrenches at yourself, like testing yourself, by stopping on a chord for a second and just kind of loitering and then figuring out what chord it is in relation to that key. So I'm going to keep going because this is part of my morning harmonic upkeep and I might as well finish the exercise. You don't have to watch it all the way through, but I encourage you to do stuff like this, regardless of your skill level. I found that, in quite truth and honesty, that most people can't even do this in root position in all 12 keys. So when you get to this level where you could use all these inversions, you're really starting to show some serious progress with the basic triads and major key. And a little bit of a pause there because I had to stop and think. And morning harmonic upkeep means I choose something and then I practice it. Could be just resolving half diminished chords or something, or messing with polychords. This time I'm just going through this. This is probably the first time I've done this exercise in a month. That's why I chose it this morning. Make sure I can still do this. Because the larger your harmonic vocabulary gets, the more you actually have to keep upkeeping it, kind of like you do with a playing skill. Like as a guitar player, I know that if I don't practice, which I rarely do anymore, all I do is compose and study scores and whatnot. I had to stop and think, because make sure I can do this and not mess up. So it seems very tedious, but the payoff is huge, even with just basic triads. And the other thing you may want to do is actually write these out once in a while as well, to make sure you can still do that. You could jump down octaves like that in the middle of the sequence just to test yourself. I intentionally started the next part of the sequence by jumping down a couple of octaves. And what's another reason to do this, as I'm sitting here thinking about this? Well, you could actually learn how to come up with endless variations on the same sequence. That's what most people who are really creative, they could actually take the same harmonic sequence and come up with an endless variations on melodies, inversions, ways to present it. And doing exercises like this helps you get to that point. Jumping down just as a test instead of continuing. So when something becomes too easy, find a new way to do it. It'll actually help with your creativity, believe it or not. And that's a really good point. Learning how to take what you already know and presenting it a totally different way is one of the best things you can do for creativity. And remember, none of this has to do with keyboard skill, so if you mess up a lot, it doesn't matter. I've just done this exercise so many times in my life that it's not really a big deal. And I'm gonna look at the time after I'm done with all 12 keys. Pausing. Pause to throw yourself off, remember? If you give yourself that little pause, you might break free of a muscle memory kind of thing. Because sometimes I do run into that issue where it's something maybe just muscle memory. Which brings up another good point that I always point out. If something is muscle memory, you're not thinking about what you're playing. That's why you do things slow. And that's why you may jump down in the middle of the sequence and continue that way as well. Throw yourself off when something's too easy. Give yourself little breaks too. Take a little break. Take a sigh of relief that you got through it. And start over again the next key. We're almost done. Minus all the talking and the little demonstrations, this exercise, once you have this completely and totally memorized in all 12 keys, probably only takes about 10 minutes tops, maybe 8 minutes. That's not a long time out of your life, especially if you only do it like once a month or something. You get to that stage where you can do it once a month. It's not a huge dent out of your life. A little bit of a pause, throw myself off, continue. See, this is, like I said, this is not about keyboard skill. Intentionally stopping and throwing yourself off and then trying to figure out where you are in that sequence again is a good idea, especially if something is muscle memory. So remember that intentionally throwing yourself off when something is muscle memory is a good idea, because it forces you to stop and think, which you really want to do in an exercise like this, is always think about what your chord you're on, like we did in the beginning when I was calling everything out. And we're almost done because we're in B. Harmonic practice, again, is not like piano practice. You're not sitting there with a metronome worrying about whether you're in time. You're doing this really slow, so it's working your brain, actually. Your recall memory. Okay, so that's it. Now, again, one of the reasons I'm showing this is if you struggle with chord progressions, probably one of the biggest reasons why is you don't have a lot of keys and chords memorized. If you do, it becomes so much simpler. People always says, you always hear the opposite. Well, if I learn too much stereo, it's going to ruin my creativity. Actually, I found that to be completely the opposite. Creating chord progressions, in my honest opinion, is one of the easiest things on the planet, because if you sit there and do exercises like this in all the modes, including all the modes, everything, learning what chords work with what modes and memorizing it in all 12, coming up with chord progressions is the easy part. Because at that point, all you have to do is work on the timing and the melodic aspect if you already can easily create a chord progression.